Hi class, Dr. Fujimoto once more. This is going to be a session, a little bit of pre-class agenda on week 3 coming up. Wanted to give you a little bit of information since we have such little time in class together. I want to talk a little bit about the virtual presentation sessions. Then I want to talk a little bit about the morning comp questions which you have coming up. You're going to be writing a practice comp question for the morning. It says here practicing the brain dump and outline. We're not going to actually practice, but I'm hoping you'll do that on your own. And then we'll talk a little bit about evaluation assessment. So the group virtual presentations, which you are working on and have been assigned already, I know the folks who are doing philosophy are working on that now, and I've got a couple of questions from them. So the descriptions are really on the syllabus and in Titanium. So it's I hope that's clear to you all about what your assignments are for that. A 5-minute presentation using technology of your choice, and then you will be uploading that, and then there's a 15-minute presentation or facilitation that you need to do that kind of extends that presentation. So that's what you'll be doing for the following week. I just wanted to mention briefly this article on philosophies and student affairs. It's a chapter in a book actually by Young that is in the resources on Titanium. Is an article that talks quite a bit about the 4 philosophies that are generally seen as the ways that student affairs has developed over the years. And so this is an important chapter for all of you to read, not just the folks who are doing the presentations, and to have some understanding about these 4 different types of philosophies and how they influenced the field of student affairs broadly. And so the folks who are doing the presentations will cover these in a general sense. I mean, we don't expect you to be philosophers on this because, you didn't do that much reading on this. But at the same time, we want you to know something about, in general, about these 4 different areas, and how might these philosophical views be related to your use of theory and the views of history as you are studying and preparing for your comprehensive exams. It's also useful to think about philosophically where you stand, how you see the world that's been shaped around you, and whether rationalism, empiricism, pragmatism, postmodernism influence the way you think, or perhaps there's another philosophy that might be more akin to what your belief systems are. And it's important to know that. It's important to know that for a lot of different reasons, not the least of which is understanding yourself and why you're in this field, and how it relates to the things that are kind of core for student affairs. So I want to talk a little bit now about the comprehensive exam. If others of you have questions about those the virtual presentations, then you can get a hold of me and let me know. Comprehensive exam, the morning question, as I mentioned last week, is really the case study question, and it's the question that in many ways is a very substantive question that gives you an opportunity to bring in much of what you know. The afternoon question does that somewhat too, but this is one that is even more, I think, a chance for you to think about philosophy, theory, history, all the different aspects of student affairs that you learned. So the strategy for responding is something we've talked a little bit about that you should be thinking about, and that is this idea that we've talked about before, that of doing a brain dump. And it'd be good for you to practice this actually this week before you come to class on Wednesday. Take one of the questions, the study questions, either one that you wrote yourself or one of your classmates wrote, or one of the sample questions, and just be clear about what's the question that's being asked here. After you do that brain dump, and connect the brain dump items with what's being asked, develop an outline from that, and then begin writing, and then make sure you leave time to proofread. So this brain dump practice, I want to recommend to you that these steps, the items for the brain dump include citations, theories, concepts, any data that you think is relevant to how you think about the work, methodologies, research methodologies, evaluation, assessment as well. So all these things should be part of the brain dump. Things that you know about that you're not looking up, but things that are in your mind that you have studied over the last 4.5 semesters. Then to practice, write down or type into the laptop any ideas, facts, and figures in those 10 minutes, just to do that and practice it. And then read over your brain dump, get a partner, and discuss what you wrote, and give each other a little bit of feedback about that. Okay, so I recommend you do that this week. So the case study question, let's talk a little bit about that. You're going to be writing your own example of a case study question. And responding to a case study, part of what we are thinking about as we read your case study questions is you should be identifying theories, key concepts, definitions related to the question that you get, and other aspects that you may use to answer the question. Make sure you're thinking about the possible issues and trends that are associated with the question that you're being asked to answer. Trends in higher education could be more national trends that have to do with the economy, or have to do with the culture, or anything like that too that influences higher education. And these are the things that shape how whatever the issue you're being asked to respond to is framed. So it's an important piece to think about. This is what we talked about last week in terms of the framing, the context in which you currently live, or we all currently live, and the issues that you're being asked to respond to are affected by that context. So ask yourself, what does the question assume about your beliefs, your knowledge, your skills, and dispositions? What does the question assume about that? To give that some thought. And what is this question lacking or not considering that it should? Sometimes we'll have questions that are asked of you in these case studies that are lacking things, and they're things that you don't know. So what should it include? And this gives you a chance actually to integrate your own areas of emphasis and expertise into a question like that when it's not mentioned, but you think it's important to consider. So, for example, if you ask a question that doesn't really identify a specific functional area, and your area is student leadership, then write about student leadership. It's got to apply, of course. Or maybe your area has to do with working in residence life, and then write about residence life. So sometimes there's an advantage to actually being a little more vague, and you can, I think, choose the area that you are most comfortable with and familiar with. And then finally, who or what is missing from this question? I think that's another piece that's related to what I just said as well. So finally, as you write your questions for this coming week, to be thinking about this, of course, what makes a case study question a strong question, and to think about that, we'll talk about this a little bit more on Wednesday, but how might you change the question to make it a stronger case study question? Okay, to think about those things as well. Okay, that's about all I have actually for today, but I want to give you a little bit of preview and get you thinking about these things, since our time is so limited again on Wednesdays. So please take some time to reflect on this and what's in this video. And we'll be ready to expand on this and ask you what your thoughts about this as we go into Wednesday and week 3. Okay, hope you're all well. Take care. See you soon. I stopped too soon. I had a slide to go, so I apologize. So if you're still listening, I hope you are. I forgot to mention that to be thinking about evaluation and assessment this week also. And I want you to spend a little bit of time thinking about, you should be pretty comfortable using and developing student learning outcomes And that's something that's going to be a part of your work here in terms of preparing for the comp exam. Also, I want to really recommend, if you haven't been using it, I hope you all have, is using Bloom's taxonomy. So if you don't know what that is, make sure you look it up and get a good version of Bloom's taxonomy and look at the different levels of words that can be used to form these student learning outcomes. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this on Wednesday, but I want you to be thinking about it. And then also think about for yourself, what forms of assessment are you most familiar with? And which forms do you need time to spend time understanding? And one of the things I will emphasize here is that sometimes we get too caught up in these more popular and more commonly used forms of assessment, such as pre and post tests and surveys and different types of assessment that are very commonly used. Sometimes, as I think you hope you found, I'm not sure if you did because of the virtual format of it, in the Maywood Education Fair, for example, it's very difficult to do some of those kinds of assessment when you have a population that's not quite as predictable in terms of the kind of sessions that we had, how many will show up, who's going to come in when, people leaving early, etc. It's very difficult to do assessment. So in that way, I want you to try to get more familiar with different forms of assessment that maybe are embedded in activities, for example, that you're doing. So I want you to think about that coming into this Wednesday's class and give me some examples of how you might embed assessment into your activities so that they are able to be assessed in many different kinds of settings within an activity. So give that some thought. I look forward to seeing you soon. Sorry for the mix-up there, and I'll talk to you soon and see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.